They threw everything at us. Vladimir Putin decided to remind us that the aggressor still has enough missile potential and enough drones to turn Ukrainian life into hell. The number of casualties from this attack is increasing every hour, and many are trying to understand the logic behind what the Russians wanted to achieve this time and what specific targets they were trying to hit. Last winter, we were well aware of the task that aggressors set for themselves when shelling Ukrainian cities and towns. At that time, the main idea of Russian President Vladimir Putin and his military was the destruction of Ukrainian critical infrastructure, with the hope of forcing Ukrainians to endure cold in their own homes and rendering critical infrastructure non-functional. The Russians failed to achieve this goal. This winter demonstrates that they have abandoned their plans to destroy Ukrainian infrastructure, realizing that the expected results would not materialize in the harsh winter of 2022-2023. Today, the main goal of the Russian state in such attacks is terror and impunity. There is a desire to demonstrate that Ukraine will continue to be under rocket attacks and drone strikes, regardless of the statements of support from the leaders of civilized countries. When we hear that Russian President Vladimir Putin is supposedly sending signals about the possibility of negotiation and ending the war, we must realize that for Russian leaders it primarily implies the capitulation of our country. Negotiations and capitulation, in the mind of Vladimir Putin and his entourage, and the majority of their compatriots, they are synonyms. However, to achieve the capitulation of our country from Putin's perspective, it is necessary to intimidate it, to convince its citizens that the only way to escape daily terror is to agree to the political conditions set by Moscow. If Russia genuinely wishes today to achieve recognition of its goals regarding the occupation of Ukrainian regions, if Vladimir Putin needs a pause in the war to accumulate new resources for the ultimate destruction of Ukrainian statehood, he needs Ukrainians themselves to agree to these terms, and to do that they might in a state of hopelessness and fear. The logic of February 2022 has not changed, and Vladimir Putin is not the kind of person who draws serious conclusions from his mistakes. He may simply believe that he did not press the enemy hard enough. If the enemy does not understand his language, the pressure must be increased, so that this language of coercion, hatred and animosity becomes understandable and facilitates the acceptance of capitulation terms. As always in our reaction to Russian actions, this desire to exert pressure will lead to precisely the opposite results. I will not say that Ukrainians have become accustomed to war and rocket attacks. It is impossible to get used to them. However, every demonstration of strength shows that it is impossible to reach an agreement with the Russian Federation. It convinces us that we live in an atmosphere of prolonged war, and the only way to emerge from this war with our heads held high is not to agree to the pressure, which may not diminish for years and could lead to repeated massive rocket attacks. Furthermore, each such action by the Russian convinces the civilized world of the baselessness of hopes that any agreements can be reached with Russian political leadership. If Russia genuinely desires, if not peace, at least a pause in its war against Ukraine, then every such brutal crime committed by Russians suggests that Western politicians who are not in a hurry to make decisions about allocating additional tranches of aid to our country are effectively assisting Russian President Vladimir Putin in continuing his crimes. Financial aid is not just salaries and a pension, not just weapons for the Ukrainian army, which stops the attacks of Russian occupiers in the east of our country. It is also the anti-aircraft defense necessary for Ukraine to protect against massive enemy attacks. It is a necessity to protect the peaceful residents of our country from crimes of the Russian Federation. Not providing assistance in such a situation is essentially creating a sense of impunity in Vladimir Putin, a sense of impunity in Russian military and in Russian citizens who sincerely sympathize with the aggressive goals of their government. This sense of impunity, in the end, turned the Russian state into a real monster in world history. Confidence that it can do whatever it pleases on this earth without facing any consequences. The presence of an unprecedented nuclear arsenal in the Russian Federation only strengthens this confidence that Russians can bomb other cities and towns with impunity, and until the world convinces Russia on the contrary, its crimes will continue, and their victims in the future might be not only Ukrainian citizens. Thank you for watching, have a nice day, and Slava Ukraini!